Have you ever looked at your life and thought, what's happening to the world? Is this the end? Like, will we live long enough to take care of the world we inherited?
This episode is for you who have no idea what the future holds. And without knowing what will happen, no one knows what to do. Do we work and save money? Or do we turn on the streaming service to watch series and wait to see what happens? The truth is, no one knows exactly what they're doing. We just pretend very well.
Adulthood arrived without a tutorial, without warning, and with an absurd bill. And in this episode, we'll prove that this bill isn't ours. We may have to pay for it, but it's not our fault.
Today, we're going to compare our lives today with the lives of our ancestors. Was their world better than ours? Or are we just complaining when we're full?
So if you've ever felt like you were born at the worst time to be an adult, relax. You're not completely wrong.
So, Andrew, who taught you how to be an adult? Did they do a good job?
I think it was my parents. I think everyone kind of learned how to be an adult by watching their parents. And the sad truth is, my parents had no idea what they were doing. And I have no idea what I'm doing with my life either.
I think everyone feels that way. We're just going with the flow, right? I think people always didn't know what they were doing. But the difference today is that our generation has the courage to admit it.
We have no shortage of courage, Ava. I think ours is the bravest generation ever. We're willing to touch society's wounds. How many wrongs happened throughout history? But people were too cowardly to question them.
I remember when I was a kid, I thought my parents knew everything. I thought they had all the answers. Well, it was a reality check when I discovered that, like me, they had no idea what they were doing.
But also, our parents' generation enjoyed relative global stability. People who were our age in the 80s and 90s experienced the height of economic and political stability. These people born in the 60s and 70s are now practically in their 60s.
These people enjoyed the best of both worlds, both the benefits of the 20th century and the modernity of the 21st century. These people are privileged.
Certainly, these people followed the evolution of television, the internet, and computers. Not to mention that the job market and real estate were much more accessible back then.
Without a doubt. With the same effort as back then, 30 or 40 years ago, it was infinitely easier to have a quality job or buy a property. Today, it's become practically impossible unless you're very privileged. I think it has a lot to do with the population explosion and increased competition in urban centers.
And that's where we get to the next question, reproduction. Considering the current scenario, it's quite understandable that our generation is so resistant to having children. The current cost of living, relative to labor compensation, is much higher than it was 30 years ago. Today, our parents demand that we have children, but how can we bring another life into this world if we can't even handle our own?
I believe that's where the culture of adopting pets and growing plants at home originated. You can laugh all you want, you can think we're weak, but at least many of us have the courage to admit that we're not capable of raising a human being. At least not with the quality of life our children deserve. School, doctor, social life, documentation. It's all too much for us.
It's enough having to survive in this crazy world where bad news comes out every day. I don't know if bad things didn't happen as often in our parents' time, or if they just didn't know about it.
Maybe, because since the internet didn't exist back then, news from around the world didn't reach them in real time, as it does today. Information took days to travel from one continent to another. Can you believe it?
And what the eyes can't see, the heart can't feel, right?
The point is, I think this is part, in a way, of a cycle that happens every 100 years. If we look at it from the perspective of someone born in 1900, or at least a few years earlier, we'll see that they faced a world as chaotic, if not more so, than ours.
That's true. Imagine, in 1912, the Titanic sank. In 1914, World War I began, lasting 4 years. Even before the end of the war, the Russian Revolution came in 1917, establishing the Soviet Union. As soon as the war ended in 1918, the Spanish flu began, killing more than 50 million people. Imagine an 18-year-old having already witnessed all of that.
These people were much younger than we are today, and it's impossible to imagine what they experienced growing up.
And that was just the beginning of their lives. In 1929, the stock market crashed, and many families lost everything. These people would have been in their 29s at the time. Imagine seeing your family lose everything so early in life. Yet these people continued their lives. In 1933, the mustachioed man, whose name we can't even mention, rose to power in Germany. In 1939, the German invasion of Poland started World War II. These people weren't even 40 yet and had already witnessed two major world wars.
And things didn't get better so quickly. In 1945, at the end of the war, the period we call the Cold War began. The arms race, the space race. This whole struggle lasted practically until 1991. The people of this generation, who were lucky enough to live past 80, practically never saw a world at peace. And we haven't even mentioned the other chaotic events that occurred during this period. Those were very difficult times.
Even with the economy relatively stable, these people were already elderly by the time things improved. Considering that life expectancy wasn't as high back then, few people born in 1900 lived long enough to see the 1969 moon landing.
That was our great-grandparents' generation. They didn't have an easy life. Their descendants, on the other hand, have enjoyed the achievements of a generation that grew up amid war and uncertainty for the past 50 years.
It's like they say, strong men create easy times and easy times create weak men, but weak men create hard times and hard times create strong men. It's a four-generation cycle. If we consider the ideal reproductive age to be 25, we would have exactly 4 generations in 100 years. It's basic math. I don't know exactly where we are in history, but I believe we are the generation that inherited a world in difficult times, and we will have to learn to be strong to survive in this world.
The next generation, if we even make it there, will inherit the same chaotic world we live in today, perhaps even worse. But the generation that comes after them will be as privileged as our parents' generation. If the math is right, and it always is, that's the prognosis for the future.
This is humanity's great challenge, managing this cycle so that times don't become so difficult that the population becomes extinct. I don't know how things were in previous centuries, but history shows that's how it works, and it's probably how it will continue to work.
It's no coincidence that the generation born after the end of World War II is called baby boomers. This term refers precisely to the demographic explosion that occurred after the war. We're talking about the years between 1945 and 1950. It was roughly from then on that things started to improve, but very slowly. Things will probably be much better by 2050, or much worse. Place your bets.
Because life expectancy has increased, baby boomers today are over 70, some even 80. Many of these people are still alive. They started their lives in difficult times, but things slowly improved until they reached today, and times became difficult again. From this perspective, a person who lived to 100 years has practically gone through all the phases of this cycle.
Exactly, because practically no one born in the early 1900s is still alive today, and even if they are, they're so old they don't even recognize the world anymore, as it's changed so much in the last few decades.
We're talking about a person who would supposedly be 125 years old in 2025. So, no, that person is definitely no longer alive. At least not as far as we know.
Assuming we manage to overcome this generational cycle, the world that awaits us in the coming decades could be very good or very bad. I bet people who lived in the 1900s must have thought it was the end of the world, just like we do today.
That's exactly what I would think if I were born back then. I think that today, and it's not even as bad as it was before.
People were barely 45 and had already lived through 2 major wars. They probably faced even greater challenges than we face today.
And the best part was that, even with all these challenges, they managed to stand the test of time and reproduce, leaving a better world for their children and grandchildren. They were the strong ones, who lived through hard times and created easy ones. Not to be pushy, but I think that's exactly where we are now.
Exactly. Now, what the children and grandchildren of these people did to the world wasn't so good. But it wasn't their fault either, because they had no way of knowing what would happen. It's the cycle's fault.
And we, the great-grandchildren, grew up in a difficult world, just like our ancestors. If we can overcome the difficulties and perpetuate the next generation, it will be their responsibility to create a better world for our grandchildren. And the cycle repeats itself.
So, we can conclude that no, the world will not end. Perhaps humanity won't survive the challenges, but the world will continue, with or without us in it.
That wasn't very encouraging, Ava, although it's true. But humanity has already faced so many challenges. Our society has become so complex. It would be incredibly unlucky if humanity were to become extinct in our generation. That would be terrible.
Considering the population growth curve, the trend is for there to be more and more human beings spread across the Earth. We are currently at the 8 billion mark.
Anton von Leeuwenhoek, back in 1679, estimated that the Earth could support 13.4 billion people. This was a surprisingly high prediction for the time, considering the relatively low population numbers of the 17th century.
The UN estimates that the global population will reach around 9.3 billion by 2050. So rest assured, humanity will likely have at least another 25 years of peace and quiet. It's possible to imagine that human civilization will end in the next few decades, but not on our watch. Maybe in 50, 70, or even 100 years.
Since we don't know what changes might occur between now and then, we can't be certain. Because changes are happening so quickly, things could get better in a matter of years, or worse.
Exactly. If we find a way to prevent the collapse before the next generational cycle, everyone born today will likely live to a peaceful old age. Maybe not as peaceful as our grandparents, but different.
And if we can overcome this challenge, well, then the next generation will be the one in charge. Isn't that what our ancestors did to us? Why would it be any different for the next generation?
So that was today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to support us by liking, subscribing to the channel, and commenting on your opinion about it.
We'll always try to bring up topics for in-depth discussions in future episodes of our podcast. So, hit the bell now to receive a notification when the next episode is released.
That's all for today. Bye, everyone.
That's it. Bye-bye.